Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome back. So today's video is about what's new in the Katana Mark2. Now this is the 100 watt 1x12 combo. They also have, of course, the head and the 2x12, etc. And I'm sure they'll be coming out with an artist soon, and hopefully a Katana Air Mark II would be kind of cool. But we'll have to see what Boss does. In the meantime, they're still working on trying to get the software ready for OS X Catalina for the Mac users, because right now all of our Boss equipment is pretty much down if we're running on Catalina. So if you have a Windows PC in the house, you're still okay. You can still program your favorite effects boards and what have you, including this Katana. And if you have a Katana Mark 1, good opportunity to upgrade to a Mark 2 if you want. There's some nice little advantages over this amp, and I'm very happy that I did buy it. And I did get rid of my Katana Mark 1 first, because there's no need to have one of each. Some guys collect these things. They have every single model. But anyways, so what's new here is, to start with, we have a variation button which changes the sound of any of these amp models. Okay, we'll call them amp models, preamps. The acoustic, the clean, the crunch, the lead, the brown. You're going to have variations of those tones. Now the variation, of course, also will affect the tone of any of the effects you have in use. Because it's affecting the amp, it's going to affect everything. So that's actually kind of cool. Anyways, your typical control, rotates forever on this model. Unlike the 50, it kind of just has a stopping point. Gain control, volume, that's the normal stuff. Bass, mid, treble, they're all the same. Okay, no differences there. The big difference here is in the effects area. Okay, with your FX, delay, booster, and mod, you now have stacked pots. So instead of having just 3 pots across, now you have a stack which gives you 5. So before, you could only run a booster and an FX, or a booster and a delay, or a mod and an FX or a delay, basically, okay? And of course your reverb is also an effect, right? So you were limited to 3. Now you've got 5, right? But do you really have 5? Well, kind of yes, kind of no. You actually have a little bit more than that, because you have the variations of your preamp sections or amp type sections here. So when you hit that, it also will affect your main effect as well. So that kind of really makes a lot more room for tone capabilities and possibilities that you could never do before on the regular Katana Mark 1s. And we're calling them the Mark 1s because they called this the Mark 2. And some guys think saying Mark 1 is kind of duh. But you know what? It kind of does make sense to call the old ones a Mark 1, considering these are now the Mark 2. Anyways, you're going to find that the buttons are a little different here. They're a little bit different touch style button. They're not the rectangular type. Still having the same 3 color sets. You've got your green, your red, and your amberish color. So that's going to be the same there, just the buttons look different for sure. All of this is going to be the same across here. Your master and your presence is the same. Power soaking circuit is also the same, and we call this a power soak because it has 100 watt, which is the full potential of the amp. It unlocks all of the juice. Alright, and then you can kick it back to 50 watts max power, or a half a watt, or you can go into standby. Standby is actually a really cool feature. It's a lot like a tube amp. You would put your tube amp on standby in order to change guitars, or maybe you got a bump cable, change it out, whatever. You put it in standby. This way you don't have to turn anything off or affect anything either, right? Standby is also really handy if you're using a line out and you don't want the internal speaker turned on. It mutes it, right? And so you can go through line out, that sort of jazz, and go into a PA system or what have you. You do have USB on this as well, of course, because you're going to need it for programming the amp with. But the USB also will allow playback through on some of your favorite programs that you use for recording. And I like GarageBand myself, and I'm starting to get into Pro Tools, mainly because the program came with my new Focusrite box. And so it's like, well, I guess I'll try out Pro Tools and see what it's like. Because the last program I had on the Steinberg was kind of, it wasn't bad, but, you know, something, you know, nicer would be nicer, right? And Pro Tools, from what I've seen, is pretty cool. The other changes you have are actually on the back of the amp, so I'm going to just shut the camera off and we'll go around to the back of the amp and turn it back on and show you the back end. Okay, so on the back end of the amp we have our send and effect loop. We had that before. Of course, our USB port, a GAFC. We also have a expression pedal port, headphone record out, power amp in. That's a new feature. Of course you have your line out. The other new feature is the stereo expander. Now this comes in really handy if you're going to link two Katanas together and you can get the true stereo sound. Well, the other thing is it also works through the regular line out to your PA and affects the sound. And it's really cool sounding. You know, so if you're going to go into a PA with this thing, you can hit that stereo expand and get that stereo sound, and it's really, really nice. Really like it. Neat feature. Does not operate unless you are going into a PA or you're linking to Katanas. Then it works that way. So, from what I understand, I've only tried it through the PA, and as you can see, my cable is hooked up, and it goes right into there, and it's actually really neat. So, and of course we do have the Katana 12-inch speaker here. It's an open cab as well, so that's going to create a lot more volume. It's going to allow the speaker to be able to move as well without restriction, whereas a closed cab, you get that restricted airflow, so the speaker can't really move, so it's very tight in movement, which, I mean, there's good points and bad points to both setups, but I mean, if you want to get some extra throbby bass out of an amp, you need to open up the back and put her up near against a wall or something, or angle it to a wall, and wow, she can really thump at that point. But of course there are drawbacks to anything, of course, vice versa. Okay, we can talk about the differences between both setups in another video. But now I have this thing on an amp stand, and as you can see below, there's not a huge tall lip here. It's only a couple of inches, but it's enough that the Katana, as long as you're not going to whack into it, it'll stay there perfectly fine. You know, I think perhaps, you know, I mean, I wouldn't suggest modding it because you're going to avoid your warranty, so maybe after the warranty's over, modify. If you want more security, I would probably put a crossbar about an inch or two, about an inch below here, and put a crossbar across either side, and that would give you maximum stability. Because otherwise, I mean, this could, you know, knife edge your speaker or something if it did topple over on the stand. Now, I don't have to worry about that myself, only because my amp doesn't leave the house. And if it did, I would just, you know, throw it on the floor on stage, you know. Anyways, let's go back to the front end here. Now, one of the other changes they made in the amp is they took out the kickstand. I don't know if it's because a lot of people crabbed about it, you know, because it was kind of a little bit of a stupid style kickstand. It could have been made so that it had adjustable length to get the speaker up on an angle, you know, especially on stage. If you're going to use this as a stage monitor and go out to your PA, right, then have your secondary monitor for your vocals to go in and so on, or just use this thing on stage, it's always best to actually angle your amp so you can get out to the crowd, because on a flat, perfectly flat horizontal plane, you're actually going to lose sound output to the audience, but at the same time, you're going to lose your hearing of your tone patches. And this can really mess you up, because hearing your amp where it should sound for what you programmed is very important when you're playing in performance. You want to be able to hear that same sound. Otherwise, you're going to be messing with your dials, messing with your effects, and probably really superly screwing up your sound. So it's just not going to be great. So you do have to have your amp on an angle facing upward enough to your hearing level, because on a horizontal plane, all that sound is going straight out, and it basically bounces back against a wall. But over across a distance, and even just being on a very slight angle, it moves the sound patterns around, and you will actually be able to hear it, and it's not slamming right into a wall at the other end. It actually allows the dispersion of the sound waves coming out of your amp to do what they need to do to get out all around properly, and it's going to give you the optimal best sound. I've noticed myself, even in the studio here, when I had my Katana mk2 before I got a stand for it, having it on the floor, it sounded way different than when I put it onto a stand. And then I thought, okay, well, I got a stand sitting under it, I'm up higher, I can hear it a bit better, but I need angle, right? So it had a kickstand on it. That helped quite a bit. But this particular stand I have, it's made by Yorkville, and it is awesome. It's actually sitting at its bottom level for height, and it can go up quite high if I need it to. And that's very idealistic, is to have an adjustable height stand, so you get things at just the right height, and you're going to get the optimal sound quality out of your amp, whether it's a Katana, an Orange, a Marshall, makes no difference. Okay, it's going to give you the best possible sound that you will also be able to hear. So when you're dialing in your patches and stuff that you're going to want to program, you're going to get that sound you're after very easily, as opposed to having the thing just sitting on the floor and your sound waves are just bouncing into a wall. So makes a huge difference. What else is new in the Katana? Well, instead of having 50 Boss effects, we now have 65, which is another big bonus. They have a listing on here too, 5 variation for each amp channels. Now I think when they're talking the amp channels, you've got the variation will take effect over your brown lead, crunch, clean, and acoustic. Okay, so that gives you your 5 there, but then of course it affects your effects too, and then you've got your channels, which is your tone settings or memory banks, and of course that variation will work with anything that's programmed in there as well. 5 independent effects sections instead of having 3, right? So now we can do 5 effects all at the same time. Power amp in for preamps and multi-effects. Stereo expand for wide spattle tone. 100-watt models only, and more features, etc. So that feature is not going to be available in the Katana mk2 50-watt version, only in the 100-watt versions. The 50 is a very basic amp. Now even the 50 is going to have your 5 effects capable, from what I understand, and a lot of other bells and whistles, but of course it's missing a lot of bells and whistles. It's a basic 50-watt amp, and it's like a $300 amp in Canada. This is $500 in Canada. So for $200 more, you get a slightly bigger cabinet than the 50. You get 50 watts more power. You definitely have a nicer set of controls, wider panel, more memory banks, and more features out the back end as well that you're not going to get in the 50-watt amp. So you got to kind of decide, do I want a 50 or do I really want to go after 100? And you don't have to run the 100 at 100 watts. Even the 50 watt, it runs 50, 25, or half watt. And of course the standby. So, it's very similar to the 100 watt in a lot of ways, but it's lacking a lot that the 100 watt does have. Okay? But the 50 watters are great. They're great for their price. They're very loud. They're very clean. You can just get away with gigging with the guys, but for live performance, I wouldn't recommend it unless you're going to mic up the amp. At least with a 100 watt Katana, you don't need to mic this sucker up. It's quite loud. And in fact, you don't need to mic it anyway, even if you are in a massive venue. You can just go line out from the back of the amp into the PA system and then you've just amplified your entire power output source exponentially. Okay, and then this way on stage you can have it loud. So you know, if you're in a huge venue, like say you're in a hockey arena, 100-watt Katana amp is more than going to be loud enough to deal with the entire band, okay, and then some. To get out to your audience more, basically what people do is they would mic up their amps. Well, in this case, you don't need to mic a Katana. You just need to go line out direct to the PA, and because you're going to have a PA anyways, more than likely, you know, venue that size, and then that's how you get things out, which also saves you on a lot of equipment, a lot of cables across the floors, all kinds of headaches to deal with, and you're golden at that point. So anyways, overall though, it is a really awesome amp. The Tone Studio has definitely changed. I'm going to give you a very quick tour of that in this video as well, to show you what the layout difference is and explain a little bit about it from what I know so far. So let's get to that part. Alright guys, let's take a sneak peek here at the new Boss Tone Studio for the Katana mk2. Now, a lot of things are going to be very familiar to you from the original Tone Studio software with the original Katanas, with the exception of now you have booster, mod, FX, delay, all independents. Now right now it says my booster is off, and it tells me what percentage I'm using of each effect as well. Now, I've done a little bit of programming on this thing. I wanted to leave the blues driver, the overdrive, and the distortion on the booster channel alone, because I do like those effects and they do work well. Now, one thing that's really nice about this is you used to end up going from 0 to, say, just before 12, and then it would cut off completely until you got a little bit past 12, and then you'd be into the mod section. Well, now you've got right up to 100%. So now your pedals are going to be even more versatile than they were before for your effects because of this. So you're going to have more range over every single effect. So even if you go in, you play around with your effects, like here's your booster, so let's just turn this on for a second. Drive channel, tone, bottom end, effect level, solo switch, solo level, direct mix. Now you're going to notice that a lot of these are going to be all the same in that sense. They're going to go the same sort of thing. You could have your drive up to 100% on the original Tone Studio, but then, like I said, you're going to be limited to your area, because you're going to only be between 0 and 12 o'clock to get to that area. But now it gives you even more range in the sense that it's a sensitivity level, okay? So your sensitivity level is greatly increased. So now you can really super fine-tune in each one of your effects better than what you could before. All right, so that's a big difference in being able to do that sort of thing. So when you're on stage, it's kind of like, oh, little teeny micro, I'm hitting near 12, damn it. And then you switch over to mod. That was really annoying, okay? It really honestly was. Not to mention the fact that you could only run 3 effects at any given time off the amp by itself. Okay, now you've got access to 5 effects all in one shot. So now you got booster, mod, FX, delay, reverb, boom. And of course, if you want to count presence as a type of an effect, that would be 6. Your equalizer would also be considered a form of an effect, so that would be 7. And then of course you got your amplifier section, so whichever preamp you're using, that would be number 8, right? And then the variation gives you your number 9, okay? If you start thinking of it in that aspect ratio. So you've gained a couple of channels, you've gained more versatility because now you have a higher range in which to go. You don't have to be so critical on, you know, little micro movement places. So it's giving you a fuller range of the effect to control the drive levels and mod levels, FX, and so on. Okay, you also have now this, which is right handy for for vintage, modern, or deep. So you can get to this quite quickly and listen to the difference yourself and see what you think. You have the assign area, which came out, I think that was in either version 2 or version 3 of the original Katana software, where we got access to all this stuff. And then, of course, your GAFC / expression area, send and return area. Okay, things are made a lot more easier, more accessible, which is nice. Pedal effects, of course. Your reverb, delay. Okay, all this stuff is very similar to you already. Now, another thing that they've changed is the chains and how the order goes. They've now given us 4 chain orders. Now, it would be really nice if they would just give in, let us arrange the order any way we see fit. I mean, they allow us that on the Boss GT1000 processor board. Mind you, that is a really sick board, so yeah, they better have done that. But they should actually have the same thing implemented into the Katana amps so that we can arrange. So let's say I want my delay first in the chain before the booster. Okay. Now you also have 2 delays in here as well. You have delay number 1 and delay number 2. And delay number 2 actually is part of the reverb knob. And I don't like having the delay number 2, which is something I wish they would have allowed us to actually switch on and off on the Katana Air amp, but they don't. So you have to basically put the tap tempo going like a major strobe in order to basically hide the delay number 2. So you just basically get your reverb. But in here with all your pedal areas, you've got, you know, a lot of different effects in each area. Okay, so we have over 65 apparently now for our effects, which is kind of nice and handy, you know. And you got some of the same effects in either of these areas, so you can kind of put things around to a certain point. The acoustic simulator in this thing is just as good. I actually find that it's a little bit tiny better than the Katana Mark1 as far as reproduction of sound goes. But that goes along with the whole fact that no 2 amps are voiced exactly the same. It's actually not possible, even for the speakers, to react the same way and also sound the same, because people also break in their speakers differently. But even if you broke in the amps and the speakers and had all your settings exactly and precisely the same, there is a slight difference between each one. Therefore, there are no 2 amplifiers the same. But some people can hear the difference, some people can't. That's fine. So anyways, we have a grand total of 8 channels. We have bank A 1 to 4 and bank B 1 to 4. Now you're going to have the same sort of deal going on with your Katana 50. You're going to have banks 1 and 2 and banks 3 and 4, and you switch the banks by holding down the panel button for a couple seconds to switch to the alternate bank. Now I haven't messed with, you know, any of these areas yet. I've left them alone, but I've been messing around mainly with the first channel on here, because the first channel is the one that I'm going to probably end up using the most either way. But I do have the ability to program whatever I want. Now we can still use all the same patches from the Katana Mark1 series into the Mark II. So all your patches in your collection will all work fine in the Mark II, which is kind of a nice bonus. Of course, you've got your Librarian, you've got your Tone Central as well, where you can get all kinds of stuff for your amp. And of course, you have the system area. Now, this is your line out setting. Gives you live, record, or blend. Power amp in settings. And of course, you have these adjustments. Global EQ. USB setting, loop back on or off, MIDI setting, owner's manual, of course, free download to download the owner's manual page. Of course, they give you the manual with the thing, but if you'd rather look at a software copy, then download the software copy. Device settings. This is for selecting your MIDI in and out and your main device in use. version is 1.00. Now I did the update. There was an update for the firmware already, but it still reads as version 100. All data backup is something else that we have as a easy to get to thing that I don't recall where it was or if they actually had this thing in the Katana Mark 1s. I can't recall because I never went into the areas unless I needed to. You know, I just mainly stuck it out mostly in the editor and messed around. Now when you start arranging things as far as you know, let me just go to the effects area. So you've got your red, your green, basically your amber stuff. So I want this one, say I wanted this one down here, and then this delay up here, and then this reverb. I can do that in that order and just program it that way. We could do that before, so that's actually nothing new. I like the new layout, actually, of the Tone Studio. It works really well. Now if we go into channel, well actually let's mess with a channel that I don't care about right now. Modern lead. So modern lead, if we hit clear, to temporarily tone setting will be initialized. Okay, so that just takes whatever they've programmed in and wipes it, and you start out from basically a reset level area is what you do with this. Okay, and then you can just feel free to start programming away. You know, saves you a little bit of work, I guess. But I'm going to go through these before I start really messing with them and see what I like and what I don't like. Now, the panel section as well you have up here. This is how they set up the panel, and you can just, you know, scroll through the crunch, the lead, and the modern and see what effects they've set up on that area. Okay. Again, you can have the variation. So if I'm on a channel and I want variation on there, then it's defaulted on. So as soon as I turn the power on, variation is on, and it's going to be with whatever my setting was last on the amp. Okay, and then I can just go from there with it and change things as I need to. Alright, so generally my amp turns on, the booster is off, the mod is on. So I have chorus and I have reverb. Okay, now if I want my acoustic in there, well, not on this part of the panel, but here, there's my program. So my program defaults on, no variation, clean channel. These are my bass, mid, and treble settings. My booster setting is off, my mod is on, which is acoustic guitar in this case. My chorus will be turned on. No matter what position my knob is in, it's only going to be in the position that I originally programmed it in, and then I can mess with it from there. So if I need to tweak more, I can, which is actually kind of nice. So anyways, that's a bit of a tour of the studio for the new studio and what's new in the new Katanas. So if you're interested in a new Katana for your collection, then take a look at the Katana Mark 2s. I really like it, and to me it was worth getting rid of the Katana 1 to go Katana 2 because I had the big headache of, well, we all did. You know, it's like 3 effects, that's all I get. You know, I want all of these, you know. So Boss kind of, you know, they listen. So now we have access to, you know, having 5 basic effects in that block all at the same time. Then they added in the variation sound thing. They added in the stereo expand and the 100-watt models. They added in more and more and more bells and whistles, which is really cool. And it's still a great, awesome sounding amp. And you can still use the pedal board with it, yes, because you have send and return area, or go direct in through the input jack with your pedal board, however you want to do things. Very, very flexible amp. Great sounding too. Definitely worth the $500 Canadian that I paid for it. I don't know what they sell for in the States, but you know, when you get right down to the mathematics of everything, the dollar really isn't that much difference. You know, it's just numbers, right? So anyway, so thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the tour of the new Katana Mark II and finding out quite a bit about what's new about it. There's still a lot more for me to find out yet. But programming is going to be just as easy as before. In fact, I think it's a lot easier and a lot less hassle. And having now 4 chain effects is kind of nice. It would be nice to have some more. Maybe in future firmware updates they'll give us more chains. Who knows? They usually give us more abilities to the amps anyways when they give us firmware updates. And if you are a Katana 1 owner, apparently word has it on Facebook this morning there's going to be a version 4 firmware release for the Katana 1s. And what all that entails for features, I have no clue yet. So maybe take a look at Boss's website, see if they have it on there, what the new stuff is on that one. And hopefully they get our Mac computers straightened out with all of our Boss hardware soon for Catalina. I don't mind having stuff on a PC to a certain point, but I prefer to program all my gear on my Mac in my room in here without having to bring my PC in to do it. So thank goodness I have a laptop and not a PC desktop, or this would really be a bad hindrance. But anyways, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one. Ciao.